couple months ago, if you have been around this long. So if you're back, welcome back. This is the video that I said I was going to do a while ago, so I'm finally here to do it. So a couple months ago, I covered the Quiet on Set documentary, which featured Dan Schneider and him just being just a terrible person to work with, being very sexist, misogynistic, things like that, right? It also covered Drake Bell and his experience with Brian Peck, who is, again, no relation to Josh Peck. And if you remember, just a little refresher, Drake Bell was the one that came forward about Brian Peck and being very, like, creepy and gross, which led to Brian Peck finally suffering a little bit of justice. So I covered that a couple months ago. Since the Quiet on Set documentary ended, there's actually been another episode that came out that I never talked about on video. And I still have my notes from that time, so I wanted to talk about that. Also, we're going to talk about Lori Beth Denberg and her story from this Vanity Fair article that I found. A lot to go over, a lot to catch up on. So, without further ado, intro. Yeah, I'm back, but also, I'm black. Hey, what is up, everybody? Yes, I returned to your phone, your computer, your TV, your tablet, your laptop. I don't know what you're watching me on at this very moment right now, but welcome back. It's me, it's Malcolm, and today I don't think I'm really gonna cut anything. It's gonna be like a one take like I did with my Cody Code video last week. So if you like the one cut videos, you're welcome. So let's just get into it because I do have some notes, but I also have some like Twitter posts to read, some Instagram posts I want to read, some news articles I want to read. So let's just get into it. A couple months ago, I covered the Quiet on Set documentary, but I didn't cover I think it was called Breaking the Silence or something like that. So I do have my notes about that. And basically what happened was, this was the reaction from like some of the actors that were in the documentary from, the support or the backlash that came from the documentary. And they did talk about race issues in that. They talked about Dan Schneider's apology video that he posted on YouTube, which for that YouTube video, I remembered I got a screenshot of it within 24 hours and it was sitting at like 300,000 views. And then when I looked at it today, like the day of me recording, which is July 20th or July 21st, see that it has reached millions of views since the last time I took a look at it. The comments are still off on the video, so obviously Dan Schneider really wasn't willing to hear anybody out. He just wanted to hear the sound of his own voice. So that's pretty much how I feel about that video. I feel like if you turn comments off on an apology video, you're not willing to listen to any criticism or listen to what people have to say. So for me personally, I know it's not my apology to take or whatever, but for me, it just seems very like ego driven. Even like editing your own apology podcast type of video on your YouTube channel, it's just very weird to me. So they talked about that in the Quiet on Set, breaking the silence, and then they also brought Drake Bell back, which I know, Drake Bell was a hot topic back then to talk about because of what he did as well. And a lot of people were like, well, it would have sounded better if it came from somebody else that didn't do these things that Drake Bell did, which I personally feel like we should still hear his story out. Like, I don't think it takes any, validity from his story away just because, yes, he did these things later on in life, but at that point in time, he did not do those things. So that story in itself shouldn't be discredited. I know we talked about the Cody Code Tana Mojo thing last week, and, about, Tana Mojo's past being held against her and stuff. Um, so I just hope that with that portion, you know, how do I say it? Like, yes, Drake Bell did those things that he like went to court for and all that. Like, I understand that, but also I don't think that means his story means any less, because at the end of the day, he did experience that, and I know that's like one of the hot button topics that came from that documentary then. And you know what? It's kind of crazy. He released like a music video or something. I don't know if I talked about that in my last video about this. He released a music video. He got a bunch of support. Um, a lot of people thought he was gonna make like this whole big comeback, but ever since the documentary kind of ended and that kind of wave of support ended, I haven't really heard about Drake Bell since. Of course, I haven't really checked up on him either, because I showed support for like that one moment in time, but that doesn't mean he's magically forgiven for the things that he did, if that makes sense. So they asked, Drake Bell, like, how does he feel about all this? How does he feel about the reception? Um, and they talked about the documentary crew, which I didn't know the documentary crew was really young. That really kind of threw me off guard. And Drake Bell said that the crew made him feel comfortable. And we're going to get back to the documentary crew in a second, because they did get called out by both Alexa Nicholas and Raquel, who was another actress that was featured in the documentary, for not really being forward about what the documentary was about, kind of using their trauma for clicks and views. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. Where am I at? Will Freedy and Ryder Strong, the people I brought up in that video as well. I don't remember mentioning it, but they did say, like, we're really sorry, we didn't know the whole story. And Drake Bell essentially said that, you know, it's kind of too little too late. You had multiple chances to address this with me, kind of thing. So I don't remember. It's been such a long time. I don't remember if he said I forgive them or I don't forgive them. But the way I have it in my notes, it seemed like Drake didn't really forgive them. It just seemed like, hey, you had your chance to apologize, you didn't, and now it seems performative. That's just kind of the vibe I got. And the big question was Dan Schneider. So the Quiet on Set interviewer, and I'm blanking on the name. I think it was Soledad O'Brien. Soledad O'Brien. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But basically, the hostess, she asked, like, about Dan Schneider's role in Drake Bell's life, and Drake was just like, I have a different feeling about Dan, because Dan Schneider was the only person that was there for me. And then we fast forward to talking about Drake Bell and his relationship with his parents, and he said he has a fantastic relationship with his dad. And I was very curious about how he felt about his mom, because in the documentary, it really seemed like mom was really negligent towards Drake Bell and really spiteful towards her ex-husband. Um, so when it came to Drake's mom, Drake was like, Brian Peck, which was the person that harmed Drake Bell, was very good at manipulating people, and I think he was in a way trying to protect his mom and just try to say, hey, she's kind of like a victim in all this as well. Um, that's not up to us to like say how he should feel about his mom. If he wants to defend his mom, that's up to him. Feel free to. Um, Peck also got brought up because people were tagging him over and over again, and Josh Peck reached out. Why did I say? Oh, I just realized. I think I said Brian's name wrong. It's Brian Peck, Josh Peck, Brian Peck, but there's no relation. So I apologize if I got that name wrong earlier. But Josh Peck did reach out to Drake. They had a private conversation. I don't know what that private conversation obviously was about. That's obviously not our business. So if they are cordial, they're cordial. That's great. And then they, and then there was like this never before seen clip from the documentary that I guess got cut out, and it was about Drake talking about how he got through all this with music, and then of course he talks about his new music video that a lot of people genuinely did like. People said it felt very vulnerable and all that stuff. So that's great, and that's kind of where Drake Bell's part in this part of the documentary episode ends. So we're not really going to talk about Drake Bell anymore. So however you feel about Drake Bell, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to disagree with you. You're free to your own opinion. Um, where am I at now? So now we get to some of the All That stars. Two of them being Brian Hearn and Giovanni Samuels, which were both All That stars, right? And they were very surprised from the fallout of the documentary. I think they were not expecting it to be as well received as it was, which that's always a good sign to me, which is you kind of put it out there, you don't know what's going to happen, and then you kind of get like this like booming reaction of support. I think that's good. And then they talk about the apology video by Dan Schneider, which again, I think it was just very like me kind of thing in his video. There was a quote that I wrote down from the video where basically if he had known about a clip, he would have changed it. But according to many of the stars on the documentary itself, they did have problems and they somewhat did speak up about it, or they made it clear that they were uncomfortable, and that was seemingly ignored. So Brian Hearn said like Dan Schneider basically gave like a really good performance. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me as someone that's been around actors for so long. He's definitely going to pick up on some niches and stuff to make this apology video seem more genuine when it really didn't feel like it. I mean, I could somewhat read between the lines. It just didn't feel very genuine to me when I watched it. And then there was a question thrown out there of like where was this when Jeanette's book came out, which is Jeanette McCurdy, who really never named Dan Schneider in her book, but it was heavily implied that it was about Dan Schneider. And Angelique Bates, who was another All That former star, who actually made a video about her experience, I believe. She has spoken up about Dan Schneider before, and I guess it just wasn't heard by a big enough audience. So if I find her video, I will try to link it down below. If I don't find it, I do apologize, but I do know she did make a video about this. Only because Alexa Nicholas, which a lot of people feel some type of way about her right now, which I get it, because she kind of went on this tirade against Kat Tenbarge, I believe, who made this article, and I think it was about Amber Heard, and then Alexa Nicholas was like, I'm a huge Amber Heard supporter, and a lot of people did not like that, and they were just kind of like, oh, I gotta unfollow, I gotta unsub from you. And then she disappeared for 2 months, didn't really post anything, and then she came back with an interview with Ariana Grande, and people just felt like that was like a little performative. Like, some people were happy that she was back, but some people were like, oh, this is kind of performative, which is something that I noticed as well. And then there is another quote from Dan's video, which says, jokes were for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny and only funny. Adults 2 years later saying it was inappropriate. So my whole thing was what that is, the whole power imbalance with Dan Schneider himself, and you have these child stars that want to make it. Of course, they're probably going to do any and everything to get their shot on TV. So him going like, oh, well, how do I say it? Being like, oh, only kids thought it was funny, but that's still not addressing the big issue of a lot of jokes being adult centered or adult themed. So a question that was also asked in the documentary were the jokes funny, and Giovanni and Brian were like, no, like we were kids, we were kind of a bit naive back then. And if the adults around you thought it was funny, you just kind of went along with it. And like some jokes obviously do go over your head as a kid, so like you don't pick up on like the real meaning of the joke. So I really think about things like that, which is you really have to watch how you act around kids, watch how you say things around kids, because if you really think about it, kids will. I think this is my personal experience. Kids will definitely repeat any action or repeat any phrase they hear without knowing full context of what it means. Um, I think the number one thing kids love to say right now is like I think I've heard fruity a couple times, and they think it's funny, but like they're not really realizing like how hurtful that is to say when you like, hey, you're acting kind of fruity today, but like they don't understand what that means, but you as an adult like know. Oh, actually, you know what? Screw it. Some kids actually do what that do know what that means, and they use that as an insult. But what I mean is like you as an adult like catch all these like little niches and things that as a kid you would never catch on to. So I always find that interesting that the big excuse is like for Dan Schneider, which is everybody thought it was okay, so why is this a problem? You know. And then they talk about the foot stuff that Dan Schneider loved, and Brian Hearn said was like the foot stuff was crazy, um, and both Giovanni and Brian Hearn have gone on the record now to say like they didn't like it. Now, of course, we weren't there back in the day to see how they were acting in person. I'm sure they physically looked uncomfortable because a lot of people don't like feet. A lot of people don't like people touching their feet, looking at their feet. Like a lot of people don't like feet, which I understand, right? For me personally, whatever. Just don't be disgusting. Wash your feet. I don't care. But what I'm saying is, it seems like Dan Schneider's big fall back from what I noticed from his reactions, the things he said was, oh well, nobody told me it was wrong, so it's fine. And I'm very well aware that in his apology video, he was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to make anyone uncomfortable, like, but you did, right? And it's not that no parents have spoken up while he was like doing shows that said, hey, this is kind of weird, this is kind of wrong, because I think it was Brian Hearn's mom, I believe. I believe it was Brian Hearn's mom and Drake Bell's dad. They have both spoken up to like people on the set back in the day, and they were just kind of washed off. And I think Drake Bell's dad, and I think I remember this, where he was called homophobic for saying like, oh hey, why is this Brian Peck person being all touchy with Drake, and like Drake's dad was called homophobic. I do remember that part. That part still kind of trips me out. I really don't know which cat like crew member said that, but like shame on you for real. Um, let's keep going, because I know this video is not supposed to be long. I want it to be like 30 minutes tops. I already see him like at the 19-minute mark, but hey, what can you do? So where am I at? Oh, here's one. I made a tweet about Nickelodeon during the Kids Choice Awards. Obviously, the weekend of the Kids Choice Awards, a really like scary event happened. I'm well aware, so don't think I'm just ignoring what happened to one of the former presidents that weekend. I'm very well aware that happened, okay? But I made a tweet about, and I think it was Renee Rapp from the Mean Girls movie, the Mean Girls musical, where I quote tweeted a picture of her because she was like covered in slime. And I said something about like the downfall of Nickelodeon should be studied. And a lot of people, well, it wasn't a lot of people, it was like 5 people. So some people like said like, oh, you're 30, like, oh, this content was not meant for you, like, oh, you're a grown man. But I think what's so funny is they didn't understand the context of what I meant when I said that. This is the context I meant when I said that. Nickelodeon's accountability with all this seems very nonchalant. They sent out one blanket statement, and it was just such a PR statement, which is, we investigate all matters seriously, or whatever they said. Like, they basically said, like, we investigate things. And it's just like, well, actually, do you? Because if you really think about it, Brian Hearn's mom spoke up, was ignored. Drake Bell's dad spoke up and was ignored. So, do you really investigate all things seriously? Or are you just saying that to cover your ass? You know what I'm saying? So, when people came at me and said, like, oh, you're grown, you're 30, whatever, I just thought it was funny because it was just like they didn't understand the context that I was tweeting that in. So, I didn't take any harm to it. It's whatever. So Giovanni Samuels said that she got a phone call from Dan Schneider a week before the documentary, and basically was like looking for some support, saying things like, I treated you good on set, right? And she told Dan Schneider on the phone, which I thought this was brave, which is like Dan, I'm terrified of you. And when I say it's brave, it's just like, it's really hard to kind of, how do I say it? It's really hard to kind of speak up against someone that made you uncomfortable, even on the phone, right? So for Giovanni Samuels to really say like, hey Dan, you're actually a terrifying person, I think that took a lot of courage. I think that took a lot of bravery, in my personal opinion. And then let me just get to one more part, which is Dan Schneider knew about the documentary. Okay. And I don't have it written down, and I don't know why. But the documentary like was known about a year before it aired, apparently. So Dan Schneider knew for a full year that this documentary, pretty much like 80% was centered around him. He knew that was coming out, right? So I made a theory. Again, this was a relation to my Kids' Choice Awards reply, whatever you want to call it. I made this theory that Nickelodeon pushed back their Kids' Choice Awards for the sole purpose of skirting past this documentary without really like having to address it while their biggest show of the year is going on. Because I saw some clips from the Kids' Choice Awards, just because I was curious about how it was going to look. Because I don't remember another Kids' Choice Awards being in the summertime. This might have been the first. I don't know. I'm not going to fact check that because it's not really that big of a deal. But my main point is, I saw a clip because SpongeBob and Patrick were the hosts of the Kids' Choice Awards. Now, now remember that the Kids' Choice Awards is a cartoon, right? So the cartoon versions, and they were like 3D renderings of SpongeBob and Patrick. There was like a stage, and it looked like a theater. And again, I'm not gonna look up the venue or whatever because again, it's not that big of a deal. But there was like these clips of like kids looking on a blank stage because obviously you can't show cartoon characters in real life. So you have these kids that look so bored and look like they hate being there, while it's peak summertime where they could be going to like Disneyland or something. I don't know. Where they're just looking at a blank stage and it's supposed to be like Nickelodeon's biggest show of the year, and they look so bored and out of it. Now, again, I'm very well aware that there was another major event happening in the world around the same time. I'm not that ignorant, but when I say there's a downfall of Nickelodeon, I barely heard about the Kids' Choice Awards leading up to that day, if that makes sense. I barely heard any advertising, and I see Kids' Choice, like, I maybe I'm tripping, but the Kids' Choice Awards, it feels like advertisements and stuff. Like, it feels like they advertised their show pretty well. It just feels like this year, I don't know what it was. It just felt like they didn't care and they just wanted to get past it and move on. Um, so that's something I noticed, and I just wanted to talk about that real quick because again, I found it funny that people said like, "Oh, you're a grown man. Why do you care? Yeah, like this isn't meant for you." And like, I just find it funny that we are defending a studio that apparently hired someone without looking at their criminal record. Because remember, Easel Channel had previous convictions and it was not caught because Nickelodeon did not do their job as a company that mainly focuses around children. Or was it? Yeah, that mainly focuses around children, and they like kids got traumatized because of that, So I find it funny that people are defending a studio like that. I just find that funny. Also, my cat is here. He keeps sniffing things and biting me, but we're gonna keep pushing it. So I did take some notes about the interaction between Brian Hearn and Tracy Hearn, which is Brian Hearn's mother. I don't think it's my place to really comment on that. It's a family thing. I don't think it should have been on TV. I kind of changed my opinion on this a little bit. It should have been a segment that should have never been on TV. This definitely feels like it should have been private, but that's just my personal opinion, so I'm going to skip past that. And then we talk about, race issues, which, as a black man, I think that's important. So one of the ex Amanda Show stars, her name is Raquel. She talked about her experience on the Amanda Show, and there was like this clip where she talked about how she was part of the scene, and there was like supposed to be like water spat in her face or something like that. And the line, because I think it was called the literals, which is they literally do everything you say to the T. And one of the lines that Raquel's character said was "spit it out." And the character, I don't know if it was Amanda's character or whatever, but the character like spit water on her face. And she didn't find it funny, she didn't like it. And they kept doing it over and over again, like multiple takes. I don't know how like comedic sketches work or whatever, but I think like one take, especially like spit takes, I think one is enough. It should be like, it shouldn't have even been like actual spit water. It just should maybe like squirted water. I don't know. I don't know how to say it. That sounded really bad. I'm sorry. But more than one take seems a little egregious. And by the third time they did the take, she got really mad. So the director told Raquel that, Amanda is the star of the show. Don't make too much of a problem. I'm going to ask her not to spin your face, but be cool. So we're telling a black woman to calm down when she's rightfully upset, just to make your other star not uncomfortable, happy, whatever you want to call it. I think that's a bit microaggressive. Actually, no, I don't think it's a bit microaggressive. I think it's fully microaggressive to tell a black person to calm down when in a situation they are rightfully upset that they are upset. I don't think telling them to calm down and be cool because somebody else is the star of the show, I don't think that's right. You know? And this goes back to the Dan Schneider statement of, if a kid felt uncomfortable, we would change it. Basically saying, like, if a kid felt uncomfortable with the scene, that he would change it. So why did it get to the third take and somebody getting mad and you still didn't change it? That kind of tells me that that statement was like bullshit, honestly. Again, that goes back to the performative, like whatever you want to call it, of Dan Schneider. It just felt very performative, his whole video. And Brian Hearn's mom was like, that's racist. And I fully agree. And then we go to the last part of this documentary, which brings Shane Lyons on, which again is another all that star from back in the day. And how, him as a white man, like being on set was a little bit different for him because for Brian Hearn and Giovanni Samuels, they said the diversity was very, like, it was there. It was very prevalent. Um, when he was 16, he was fired due to his contract not being picked up, and Shane was asked like, "Why did you come forward now?" He was just like, "I just wanted to add a different perspective," and he was actually on set with Brian Peck, and he praised Drake for speaking out. He said nothing really happened nothing happened to him personally, but like there were passes, and I think something that Brian Peck wrote, I actually wrote this here. Brian Peck asked Shane Lyons if he knew what blue balls were. And mind you, he was 13 or 14 at the time. And then he talked about Dan Schneider passing the buck when it came to ownership of his mistakes. Because let's not forget, Dan Schneider's whole thing was the parents were okay with it, which is to me is like him saying, "Oh well, nobody really stopped me, so why is this a big deal?" So let's just talk about because that's kind of it for the breaking the silence portion. Also, my cat is here, so he's a good boy. Okay, so let's just talk about some of the things that I kind of noticed after slash during the quiet on set like spree that was going on online. Um, just gonna kind of speed through this because there are so many articles about all of these things, but I do want to get to one person in particular, which is Lori Beth Denberg and her story. So I'm going to talk about hers in a little bit more detail. So Ali Demko, who played Rosalina's in the Nickelodeon show The Naked Brothers Band, said that she was like forced to kiss a grown man at like the man was 30 and she was like 14 years old at the time. And she says that Nickelodeon like threatened to fire her, um, and she was like being an outcast on the show and things like that. Let's talk about this. I know I'm going to speed through this, but I'm already at 30 minutes and I don't have much longer or much else to talk about, I promise. But I do want to talk about this, which is who were the adults in charge on set that day? Because I do have questions. How did this get greenlit, first of all? And secondly, how did no grown adult see like this 30-year-old man and go, hey, maybe we shouldn't have this teenager kiss this grown dude that is 16 years at this point, 16 years older than her, and she's a minor. Maybe we shouldn't do that. I don't know why no adult spoke up and said that this is wrong, but shame on all of you for letting that happen. And then we have Amber Frank, who was on the Haunted Hathaways, which I actually liked the Haunted Hathaway show. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was a good concept. Said that there were some computers that were sent to Nickelodeon that had CP already on the computer, and I that so how do I say it? Somebody ordered some computers at Nickelodeon. The computers came to Nickelodeon and they had CP on it. Now, is that the fault of Nickelodeon for not checking who they bought it from? Or is that a conversation for the person they bought it from with like the FBI? Because I have so many questions that I feel like this video is not long enough or not warranted enough for me to really delve into. But I don't understand how like Nickelodeon has all these things happen around them and the only statement they really release is, "Oh, we investigate all matters seriously." And then Brian Peck did come up in another thread, and basically, it talked about this former actor name. Maybe he's not former. I do apologize if I'm wrong. Michael Bauer. He was on another Nickelodeon show, and I think it was called The Willies. And he auditioned at Brian Peck's house. And Brian Peck, you know, as we know now, he's a very creepy person. He asked Michael if he had a problem being naked with maggots. I don't know why a grown man would ever ask a child that question, like man or woman. I think that's gross. I think that's weird. I think that, I don't know. That bothers me. And just thinking about it, it's really gross. It's really creepy, actually. Um, let's talk about people that came in support of Dan Schneider, which Kyle Massey, and I think it's Kyle Massey and Chris Massey. Their mother spoke up and said, like, basically it was the parents' fault. Don't blame Dan Schneider, blame the parents, things like that. However, Chris Massey then came back to that and said, my story will be told for me. You know, please don't, like, message me about my mom. Thanks, things like that. Which, that is basically saying, like, I don't agree with my mom. Don't know what she's talking about. She doesn't speak for me, kind of thing. Which, hey, I respect that. Like, you're a grown man. You can make your own opinion. I don't have an issue with that. I don't know if he made any other statements about the situation. Not that I know of. And then there was the Ned's Declassified podcast. I know I'm speeding through all the things that happened before, during, and after. So if this video was a little all over the place, a little bit chaotic, I apologize. But the Ned's Declassified podcast reacted to, I think it was the Drake Bell part, and they were kind of like cracking jokes and making fun of the whole situation. And this Twitter user by the name of BB Jess was like, it's really gross that you guys are making jokes about this, essentially, which led to Devin, which is one of the Ned's Declassified stars, X-stars, whatever you want to call it. He was the only one out of the 3 people from the podcast to make a statement saying, I'm so sorry, Drake. I am so sorry that I hurt you. I was being an idiot, which he was. But I think that just leads back to, is it because it's Drake Bell that, he felt it was okay to make those kind of jokes? I don't know. I don't know what he was thinking at the time. I don't know what any of them were thinking at the time to make a live stream reaction to the docuseries and saying things like, oh, well, that didn't happen on our set, even though on their own podcast, they talk about how they hook up with each other and all this stuff. And I'm just like, that's not normal either, to hook up with each other in your trailers. So I want to get to this part, and this is the part I really wanted to talk about. So Dan Schneider was basically like, I didn't do anything wrong. He released his PR video, all that stuff, right? And then, and I haven't heard from Dan Schneider since this happened. He does respond to the allegations, of course, in the news article. We're going to read his statement here and there. But Lori Beth Denberg, who was like one of the staples at all that, came out with her story and basically said that, Dan Schneider was preying on her. And I'm just going to preface. I'm going to preface this by saying I feel like this story got talked about for a little bit, but then it got pushed away really fast because Lori Beth was 19 at the time, which made her a legal adult. So for me, it felt like some people were like, oh, well, she was an adult, that happened, and then they just kind of moved on. Versus people, I still see some tweets to this day about Drake Bell and his story, which I'm not comparing the two, but it feels like just because Lori Beth was an adult at the time, it felt like her story just kind of got left by the wayside. So I want to talk about it myself because it just seems fair that if I'm going to talk about all these other stories, I want to give her the same respect. And oh, sorry, I hit my mic. I'm sorry, I'm not editing. I'm not going to edit anything out, so I do apologize that I just hit the mic like that. So I just want to read some passages from the Vanity Fair article that I found about this. It says, Denberg, who was 17 when she joined the sketch comedy show All That, alleges that her relationship with Dan Schneider became sexual around the time she turned 19. Denberg says that in a meeting with her, Schneider allegedly proceeded to show her clips of, like, adult content on his computer. She claimed that the grand finale of the footage featured a woman performing bestiality on a donkey. And then it says, quote, I feel like this is the first time he preyed on me. And then it goes to Dan Schneider kind of clapping back saying, the fact that an executive producer quiet on set would pursue allegations regarding what may have happened between adults nearly 30 years ago, only a week after I filed a defamation lawsuit accusing Quiet on Set of being intentionally false and misleading, seems more than coincidental. So let's talk about this, right? He never seemingly denied that it happened. All he is saying is, why is it a big deal that two adults did something? You guys are running with it. I have so many thoughts here. Okay. So one thought I keep hitting the mic. I'm so sorry. One thing I do have a problem with this is he's trying to downplay it so hard about what he did, which is gross and predatory behavior. She's 19. I forgot how old Dan Schneider is, but I do know he is way too old at that time to be showing adult videos to a 19-year-old. I don't care if she's legal. That's still gross. That bothers me. And the fact, again, he's trying to be like, well, you're only attacking me because I sent out a defamation lawsuit. Which, by the way, I didn't talk about the defamation lawsuit. Basically, the defamation lawsuit was Dan Schneider saying the Quiet on Set documentary made it seem like he was like this super predator and really made it seem like he was doing all these gross things, and like the documentary was claiming that he was this person that he's not. I watched the documentary and maybe I can watch it again, but I don't remember anybody in the documentary saying Dan Schneider was like that bad to the point where he's like a Brian Peck or whatever. And even I think someone was asked, like, is Dan Schneider this? And they were like, no, he's not that, but he is very mean, he's very vindictive, all that stuff, right? So I don't get his defamation claim. I mean, especially after he posted his apology video, which I knew was BS, because you wouldn't go from I'm so sorry to I'm gonna sue you. That's not that the correlation isn't there for me. So let's just keep going. Denberg also alleged that Schneider would call her during this period and on one occasion initiate phone sex with her. There were sleepovers at Schneider's house, claimed Denberg, where they would give each other massages. Again, Dan Schneider and this massage thing is so weird to me, and it's such a power play because obviously Lori Beth wasn't the only one. He asked multiple women for massages. I don't get it. I think that's creepy. Dude, you make enough money. Please hire a massage therapist or just, I don't know, man. That's, you do you, but like, don't, like, you're a creep. Okay? But like, I don't know how to say it. It just, that's gross, you know? And where they would give each other massages, and Dan Schneider would frequently watch adult content on his computer. During one massage, Schneider allegedly fondled fondled Denberg's breasts and put his mouth on them. I couldn't have been more green, Denberg said, calling her dynamic with Schneider a weird, abusive friendship. She added, I couldn't have been more vulnerable. And that kind of breaks my heart. Again, as someone that has been groomed and preyed upon when I was younger, the whole being preyed upon thing, it's a real thing. Like, I think when I was younger and I realized it was happening, I was so scared to kind of be like, I was so scared to say stop because, what would they do if I said no, So I kind of went along with it. And, thankfully, as I got older and realized what happened to me, I don't have any contact with this person anymore. I don't think they follow me on any socials. If they do, I'll try to make sure to block them if I do see it or I see them. But I think for Lori Beth's story especially, it does break my heart, especially because she was going through all of this, and she's in one of the most open places in the world, in Hollywood, California, Hollywood, LA, wherever you want to call it. Because she did keep acting after 19. I think she was on the Steve Harvey show. She was pretty funny on the Steve Harvey show, actually, where she kind of could shine more. And I think that's because she got away from Dan Schneider and the pressure of Dan Schneider, where she didn't feel the need to not the need to, just didn't feel preyed upon, I guess. So I have been rambling on. Again, I have no cuts in this video, so that's kind of where I am at today. But I think I want to leave off on this, which is for everybody that's been affected by both Dan Schneider, Brian Peck, Easel Channel, everybody that has been affected by the people from this documentary. I am praying for you in a way, even though I'm not super religious. I think a lot of people know that. But I am hoping that tomorrow is a better day for you. For the Quiet on Set documentary, I have some thoughts, and I think I'll leave it here with, please, if you're going to ever, this crew especially, if you're ever going to do something like this again, I would advise you to please just be upfront about what your documentary is about, so the people in your documentary don't feel so blindsided next time. For instance, Mark Summers was blindsided. That's why he left. He was in one clip and then he left because that's not what he signed up for, and he didn't know about it. Raquel didn't know what the documentary was about, and it just seems like a lot of people didn't know what the documentary was about until it came out, and I think that's very irresponsible on the Quiet on Set crew. So that's kind of a criticism that I have personally. But other than that, I think that more child stars from back in the day, I hope they feel brave enough to tell their story. And when that time comes, I hope we give them the same amount of love, the same amount of, respect, care, whatever you want to call it. I hope when that time comes, because I feel like it is going to come again, I hope we are there just like we were back then. Once again, it is Malcolm. That's me. I didn't want to make another video, and I didn't feel comfortable making another video until I got this off my chest, because I have been thinking about this for a while. And I've been gone for such a long time, so I really wanted to talk about this. Don't know what I'm going to talk about next. I think I have an idea. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, if you made it this far. A lot of people don't make it this far to the end of the video, so if you're here, thank you. Once again, it is Malcolm. That's me. I have nothing else left to say. So, without further ado, I wish you well, I wish you good health, and I will see you again next time.